Okay, we're back in our recording studio, and we sound different because we are not using blankets over. And we sound different because we're not using blankets over our heads because we were videotaping this right now.
Yeah, and we really aren't that cold.
Yeah, I'm not uncomfortably warm, just warm.
I'll just move on.
Okay, well, before we move on, I want to make sure that everyone knows that even though the podcast is ending, the blog won't. The blog will continue to go as long as I have the time to do it, which is a lot easier than doing the podcast, but also we are going to sort of be branching out from the blogcast into some different areas. Well, we might still do some little audio things here and there, not full podcast size, but we also have a YouTube channel right now, so we'll be trying some different things with video, and some aspects from the blogcast may carry over to that. We have some ideas what we could do with it, and since we never actually did a video podcast, we can sort of do some of that stuff there. Wow.
I'm quiet.
I know, we're all, I don't know, it's almost come down to the end. But I guess we can stall a bit longer by going over a list of thank yous.
Okay.
You must be really happy. You love doing thank yous.
Yeah, thank yous are just so polite.
Most of the time, yeah. But this podcast would not have been made possible without...
It would not have been possible?
Alright. This podcast would not have been possible without the help of many, many different people. First off, I want to thank our parents for allowing us to do this and for encouraging us the whole way. And also, we want to thank Bob Smithhauser and Jesse Floria for being our first interviewees. I think that's how you say it. Yeah. And for also acting in Austin PGPI, which was a lot of fun. So, thank you guys.
You know you just did 3 without me doing even 1.
Yeah, I got that, but I'm just waiting for you to interrupt me.
Oh, I just did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next up is, well, before we go any further, this is pretty much no order. And before I go on, this list isn't in any order of importance. It's just it's in random order. Because not one person is better than the other.
And he typed them out as the names came to his mind. So.
Yeah, that too.
And his mind doesn't work orderly. What you were saying.
Yes. We want to thank Nathan Hubler. Even though he wasn't officially on the podcast, you have heard him in the background in some of our interviews that he helped set up. And that includes our interview with Bob and Jesse and Dave Arnold, and also having Bob and Jesse and Diane record their lines for different radio dramas. And also, he promoted some of our podcasts on the official podcast blog, which is really cool. So thank you, Nathan.
We also want to thank Jessica Quisenberry, who is an amazing cousin of ours and amazing friend. And we so enjoyed having you out here, Jess.
Yeah, and thank you for being our very first guest host, which all the other hosts we had after that were people that we just talked to on the internet, but it was so cool having another person here with us, which that's only happened once. We haven't had anyone else record with us in person before.
Yeah, and thanks so much for putting up with us.
Yeah.
Him especially.
Because this is on video, I'm not going to do anything. And we also want to thank Phil Lawler for being so generous with his time. Phil is just such an awesome person. He took the time to do that 2+ hour long interview with us, and also performing in Sibling Spies and Sky Weldon. And we love to hear from you, Phil. We thank you so much for everything you've given us and for being such an encouragement to us, and also for making Odyssey. And that's a big plus. And also, we want to thank Jacob Isom. Even though he was never on the podcast, I was wanting to interview him on the podcast, but that didn't work out. But we want to thank him for helping promote the podcast and for being a real faithful listener. And also, we want to thank you, and we also send a thank you to Dan Klein, or Odyssey fan, for being on our podcast and letting us interview him. It was a lot of fun, and we hope you get even more stuff for your collection.
And we want to thank Devin and Victoria Francis for all of their...
Yes, they have been, besides us, they have been on more podcasts than anyone else. It's, I don't know, they're such fun to talk to. I was going to say be around, but we've never actually met them in person, but it almost feels like we've known them forever. But we want to thank them for letting us interview them, and actually, Victoria wasn't originally going to be in the interview, but she wanted to be there when Devin was interviewed, so we included her in it, and I think that was really an act of God, because that really started our friendship and a long relationship on the podcast. And we want to thank them for performing in Sibling Spies, Sky Weldon, and also Devin for doing all those Odyssey Broadway songs, and for doing that Did You Know segment as well.
You guys are amazing.
Yeah. And we also want to thank Andrei Stoika, who, in my opinion, is wit. He does a great job playing Mr. Whitaker, and we want to thank him so much for being on the podcast for us to interview him. It was such an honor to talk to him.
And to Aria Curzon.
Yep, we really enjoyed our time talking with you in our interview. It was really, really nice to talk to you. And also Frank Montenegro for doing so much for us. He played Dr. Killjoy and was the announcer for Sibling Spies, and also did that commercial in Sky Weldon. We really love your voice, and we thank you so much for all that you do for us.
And to Brenda McFarland for his involvement in the podcast, for letting us interview him, and for loving Southern Gospel.
Yep, that too. And also, we want to thank you for being such a great encouragement to us. And also on our list, we have Dave Brown, the really cool New Zealander. I guess that's how you say it. You can correct us later if you want, Dave. But we want to thank you for being on our podcast and also being such a big fan of it. And along with Daniel Gray, who, along with Dave, they helped us review Sergeant York, which was a ton of fun. And
that
also...
rhymes.
Yes. And it was the first time we had people from 3 different countries on the podcast at once.
Yeah, people from 3 different countries, and one from Mars.
You better be nice.
Well, I have to, I'm going to not have I'm not going to have very much longer to annoy you on the podcast. I might as well do it now.
Yeah. So I guess I have to say something more about Emily Jones again soon,
no,
right?
No, you don't.
Okay. But thank you guys so much for joining us and being really great friends. And thank you to Zach Callison for being on our podcast and allowing us to interview you, and for putting up with us, because when we recorded it, it turns out it wasn't recorded properly, and we only had our voices, and he was getting ready to go to Switzerland, and we actually recorded the interview again the day before he left, or the day he was going to leave, and we were able to do it that time. And even though it wasn't as good as the second time, it did give us a chance to talk with you more, which was really cool. And we also want to thank his dad, Ed Callison, for setting it up as well. And we can't forget Josh and Jordan and Kelly Taylor from the Blind Macau YouTube channel. We want to thank them for being on our podcast to be interviewed by us, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and thanks so much for putting up with our internet connection with dropping out.
Yeah.
That could go for Devin Victoria as well.
Yeah, and Arya Curzon as well.
And anybody else who experienced our little internet difficulties.
Yeah. Skype is really useful, but if you don't have a strong enough internet connection, it doesn't work really well. And we want to thank Diane Angolia for stepping in to the... And we want to thank Diane Angolia for stepping into the role of the announcer or the narrator for Sky Weldon. You did a fantastic job playing in that. It was so amazing, and all the energy and warmth that you gave the character was really, really great. I want to thank you for doing that for us.
Yeah, and we also want to thank Josh and Allie Coe for, all they do. They are pretty amazing as well.
Yeah, and to add to that, because Tasha probably doesn't remember everything that happened on the podcast, but...
Like you do.
We want to thank them for being on our podcast, to be interviewed, and also to help us review Great Expectations, and for $3 more. That was a lot of fun, and we wish you guys well on your podcast.
Which I can't wait to hear.
Yeah. But by the time this podcast comes out, it might have already been out.
True, but then if it has already been out, we'll just change that to, we really enjoy it.
Yeah. And we want to thank Ryan Matlock for being on our podcast. And some of you all know him as Sir E from episode 42. And also the one clip that we did recently where Sir E hacked into her computer. It was so much fun doing that episode with him, and actually the script I had for when he hacked in to get our clip of an interview with Dave Arnold, I only had a basic script which I didn't think was very good, but he took it and made it really awesome. And also we want to thank him for letting us interview him for this podcast as well. And your podcast rocks as well. And we also want to thank the old judge from Twists and Turns for promoting our podcast and being such a great encouragement, and for being a Southern Gospel fan. And next, Kevin McCreary. We want to thank you so much for all the help you've given us on our podcast. Kevin has given us a lot of technical advice on our podcast, and giving his opinion on certain things that we wanted to do. And also for performing in Sky Weldon. He played a great Rough Randy. And also for, I don't know if I should thank him or not, but for allowing Ethan to be on our podcast.
Yeah, you really should thank him for that.
Yeah, but I guess maybe it's somewhat sort of an honor for Ethan to be on our podcast.
The second biggest fan. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And we want to thank Dave Arnold again for being on this podcast to be interviewed, and we're still praying for you, Dave. And we also want to thank Michael Wilmot. Even though he wasn't on the podcast, he has been a big fan of our podcast, and he also did the sketches of illustrations for Sky Weldon and Live Along Cassidy, which unfortunately wasn't finished because his writing tablet broke, but we want to thank him for what he did do and for being an awesome friend as well. And Garrett Vandenberg, We want to thank you for being on the podcast as well to play Sheriff Gates, which was absolutely amazing. I was not expecting how that turned out, but you did. You just play that character so well. I mean, I can't. If I didn't know it, I wouldn't have recognized your voice. You did a great job with that. And also, we want to thank Luke Forsey for creating our second album art. Actually, we've had 3, but the first one was never released. But in our change of art, our album art contest, his was a winning entry, and it's been the album art for well over half of our podcast. So thank you so much, Luke. And to Audrey Kennedy for being such a big fan of our podcast and for playing Franny Oak Tree. Even though it's just a small line, you did really, really well with that. I was really impressed with how you did the lines for it, and we wish that our podcast would go on more because we would have loved to have you on some other stuff, but thank you so much. And we also want to thank JD Sutter from Audio Theater Central for promoting several of our podcasts and also for being a fan of our podcast and also for inviting me to be on Audio Theater Central along with Kevin McCreary. That was a whole lot of fun. Thank you, JD. And this next person doesn't seem like he would be a part of our podcast, but he actually has been. Mark Zuckerberg. Yes, I know, you may be surprised by that, but really, pretty much every interview and radio drama came about because of Facebook, because if it was just through email, I wouldn't have been able to do all this stuff, contacting the different people to be on the podcast. His invention, his website has really helped us, and this podcast wouldn't have been here without him.
So thank you for creating Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, we could also thank whoever created Skype or the phone, which Alexander Graham Bell. I know that one.
Or the internet.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure who did that, but, you know, all of this, which is pretty amazing. About 20 years ago, podcasting wasn't even a reality. You had to be in a radio station and making money, but podcasting, just get a couple microphones, a computer, and the internet, and you got your own show, which is really cool. And we couldn't get all the people that have contacted us and listened to our podcast because there have been a lot of people. But we want to send a big thanks out to all of our listeners and subscribers because without you, we would have no audience. We want to really thank you guys so much for listening to us and putting up with us. And we also want to thank all the writers and sound designers and actors on Adventures in Odyssey because...
And everyone else who works for it.
Yeah. Because without you, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. And we wouldn't be having this podcast, and we wouldn't have this much fun. And we also wouldn't be wearing these Adventures in Odyssey t-shirts, which you can't really see that well, but we want to thank you guys so much. And most of all, a big special thanks to God. I want to thank him so much for giving me the ability to do this. I think it's a gift he's given me, and I'm excited to use that gift even more in the future. And for making us brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I really want to thank the Lord as well. I mean, without him, we wouldn't be here. There would be no Odyssey. There would be nothing. I'm so thankful for that, and I'm so thankful that he gave me an annoying, aggravating, and...
You're making it sound not so good anymore.
And amazing and wonderful brother.
Better.
I will say it. Okay, and for allowing us to have so much time to have so much fun.
Yeah, and to be able to talk with all these fans and actors and writers and sound designers and everyone has been a huge blessing. When I first started this podcast, I had no idea how long this would go on. I had no idea what we would be doing. I mean, we had some dreams that we had to, like, different people to interview and stuff, but we never imagined all this, and because of God, we are here today, and we've done all this really cool stuff that we otherwise wouldn't have.
I remember as a little girl listening to Odyssey, and I'm like, wow, those people are so amazing. It'd be a miracle if I could ever speak to them, and we've gotten to speak to several of them. I really thank God for the opportunity to do all that we have been able to do.
Yeah. Boy, I don't want to continue because that's all the thank yous that we have. And you know what's left, right?
He doesn't want to continue, but he doesn't want to stop.
Yeah. I thought I might cry, but I guess I'm not. Okay, I think I might have teared up a little bit with that. Maybe just my allergies.
Yeah.
But we want to say thank you once again for everyone who has listened to, been on, talked about, shared with people.
Put up with.
Yes.
The Adventures in Odyssey
Blogcast too,
that
yes.
too.
Especially us.
Especially him.
Ate up already. But you guys know that all the banter that we've had back and forth together, we really do love each other, and I'm so glad that God gave me a sister with a love for Odyssey and able to put up, and the ability to put up with me to do all this. It's been, oh boy, I sound like a broken record. We keep repeating this stuff.
You keep repeating yourself.
Yeah, but I don't know, this has been an amazing experience. It's sad to end this, but I'm absolutely certain that there are better things in store for both of us, and
I can't wait to see what God has in store for us next.
Yeah, me too, and we're not gone forever, guys, so don't be too sad, because, you know, we'll be doing stuff in some way, shape, or form. So, do you think that's enough stalling?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh boy, this is going to be hard.
Just keep going.
Okay, here we go. The Adventures in Odyssey Blogcast has been a production of the Adventures in Odyssey blog.
You can visit us online anytime at AIO-blog.blogspot.com.
There you can still find the latest Odyssey news, all of our past podcasts, and lots of other cool stuff.
You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/AIOblog.
You can also circle us on Google+. And be sure to circle us on Google+.
And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We want to thank you so much for listening to this very long episode of the Adventure Odyssey Blogcast, the longest one ever. It's been a lot of fun, and we want to thank you so much for listening to the Adventures in Odyssey Blogcast.
Bye.
See ya.